When Phillip Marzouk told me that he'd worked on a marketing campaign for Tolkien's The Hobbit movies in partnership with Warner Bros. In Air New Zealand, I nearly fell out of my chair. We are both huge fans of The Hobbit, and he says that for him, helping with that marketing campaign was a dream come true for sure. So as solopreneurs and small business owners, we all dream of having our own marketing and branding expert. But what if you could create a powerful brand without a massive budget? Because most of us don't have a massive budget. Phillip Marzouk's insights could be a game changer for you and your small business. Today, Phillip shares the journey that took him from a corporate marketing strategist to an advocate for small business branding. So in the episode, we discuss the enduring principles of marketing that work at every scale, from global campaigns to local businesses, and he also dives headfirst into the latest trends, like how to use AI wisely and when to delegate so you can focus on growth. Now, Phillip's experience across both corporate and small business marketing worlds gives him a unique perspective. So if you're ready to get real about what it takes to build a strong brand, Phillip's advice is both practical and inspiring. Welcome to the Online Business Launchpad podcast. I'm Trudy Rankin, and I bring you stories, tips, and advice from online entrepreneurs who have overcome problems and challenges to get to success. Because if they've done it, so can you. And my mission is simple. I want to help you solve the challenges you face as an online business owner so that you can have more time and money for yourself and your family and more choices in how to live your life. Marketing and branding is something that I think a lot of solopreneurs, small business owners really struggle with because it's not the natural way of thinking. Branding is something that can feel a little bit foreign. And I wanted to bring on more people onto my podcast who can talk with some expertise and experience about the whole marketing and branding scenario, because as you're well aware, the whole world of marketing is changing a lot thanks to things like AI. I'm just so happy to have Phillip on the podcast. Thank you for being here, Phillip.
Yeah, sure.
So let's go ahead and get started by just dipping down a little bit into when you actually got started. How did you build your expertise and experience as somebody who is a marketing and branding expert? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to what you do today.
So I've been in marketing for a little over 13 years now. I've been doing this for a while. What's funny is I actually started out in film. I went to school to do film editing, and after I left school, I made a film, went to the Cannes Film Festival, and it was an amazing experience, and I decided I never wanted to do that again. I got a job at a small agency. They taught me to develop websites. I started off as a webmaster, mainly just doing some data entry, and from there I learned how to code, learned HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, a number of other things, and then I got really fascinated with the design aspect of things. Coming from a more artistic background, especially with film, I've been using Photoshop since I was a teenager. So I got really into the website design aspect, and how you bring those designs to life really fascinated me. After doing that for a little while, I got into email marketing and really trying to find that sweet spot of like, where can you develop these different layouts and pages? And emails was the next. And from there, I just took off. I was in deep. I was drinking the Kool-Aid of marketing, and I loved it. I learned all about like PPC, SEO, I learned about strategy, and that's where.
So I'm stopping you just for a little bit, because a lot of people who are just getting started in the world of marketing might not actually know what things like PPC or SEO stand for. Do you want to just explain that to them?
Sure. PPC is pay-per-click advertising, and SEO is search engine optimization. To give a brief summary, pay-per-click advertising doesn't necessarily just mean on search engines, but it is any kind of advertising that you would normally see within social media, within banner ads. If you come across advertising online, it's usually covered under the umbrella of pay-per-click or PPC advertising. SEO is very search engine specific. However, SEO can be a broader term as well. because it determines not just the search engine like Google, but any search field, right? So if you think, for example, there are like Etsy shops out there, right? Etsy has a search function. So it's SEO that you would implement on your page to make sure that you show up higher in Etsy's search. Same thing goes for Amazon. Same thing goes for Google. Google is the typical like dominant force when people are talking about search engine optimization, but it's really key to keep in mind that no matter where it is that your shop is existing, you want to make sure that you understand how people are going to find you and optimize for those appropriate searches.
No, thanks for that, because I think it's really useful to understand the difference. And in a nutshell, pay-per-click, the word pay there, obviously money. SEO, oftentimes, if you're doing it yourself, it doesn't cost anything, but it can take a different amount of time to actually get success in that. So I'm curious, you were working for an agency. You said you drank the Kool-Aid of marketing. How long was it before you got to the place where you decided you wanted to basically take this further? What did you do after that?
Shortly after working at that agency, I got a job working for Qantas, and I was working in their marketing department, and I learned a lot from that company about marketing strategy and kind of the high level perspective of what it takes to really get a full-fledged, very well-funded marketing campaign in motion. And the biggest takeaway that I learned was that when it comes to marketing, yes, money is important, but it isn't the end all be all of everything. And there are a lot of different avenues and a lot of different things that you can do within marketing that are very budget conscious. And again, this was a very well-funded organization. It's a major airline, and it was I was on a team that was responsible for all of the North American region. And keeping that in mind, there was so much in not just like regulations, but also like corporate structures and strategies that we had to get really scrappy with how we budgeted the money a lot of times. So even though it was very well funded, you'd be amazed at the amount of budget conscious things that you still have to do, even in a major organization. And I learned a lot from that experience. And from there, I moved to a different agency. I worked at a couple different startups. And the one thing that has stayed consistent throughout my career is that I love helping smaller companies. I love startups. I love mom and pop shops. I love the solopreneurs. They are my people, very much through and through. I worked at a lot of larger organizations like Qantas, and I've done major co-op campaigns, for example, with the Dodgers and Warner Bros. When the Hobbit movies were coming out. I've done like a lot of these really big campaigns, and as much fun as they are, at the end of the day, it's not as satisfying or fulfilling as being able to see that struggling automotive shop or mechanic shop, for example, and making the 2 or 3 suggestions that really help them turn things around and starting to see cars come in their shop. And now they went from a struggling shop that was about to close to they're able to feed the family. And that, for me, has always been the thing that makes me feel most fulfilled.
I have to ask, because you mentioned it. You mentioned the Hobbit movies. And of course, with a New Zealand background, so it's just Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, etc. So did you actually do a campaign for the Hobbit movies?
So I worked on a campaign with Qantas and Air New Zealand at the time in cooperation with Warner Brothers when those movies were coming out. This was a while ago, but when those movies were coming out, Air New Zealand had 3 airplanes released with the different designs, and Qantas had an entire campaign where they were having people going to New Zealand and visiting tour packages to Christchurch and things like that. And you have to go to Hobbiton as one of the experience. So we worked in tandem in a co-op campaign with Warner Brothers and Air New Zealand. And yeah, I'm a huge nerd, so that was probably the most fun I've campaign. I remember I was working in an office with a lot of people who just, they were like, oh yeah, the book. They're, oh yeah, that's like a cartoon thing, right? I'm like, no, it's not. Being the one nerd on that campaign really warmed my heart.
That's classic. That is just classic because, of course, I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and I was in New Zealand when they were making the Lord of the Rings movies, and so we were living in Wellington, and we saw all of the stuff that was happening and all of the media and all the secrecy and all the hype and the excitement. It was really cool. Really, you had to have lived through it, I think. But that's really cool that you had that experience to do a campaign that was so unique and so incredibly interesting. And that's fascinating. And the next question is that as you started working with smaller businesses, as you said, mom and pop shops and solopreneurs and things, how different is it working with small companies, small businesses like that, as opposed to working with a massive campaign like that?
It's very different and incredibly the same. And the reason why I say that is because at the end of the day, marketing as a strategy as a whole really hasn't changed over 150 years. The tools have changed, and these specific methods around the usage of those tools have changed. When you're talking about like the release of AI and like major GPT models really taking off, before that, the big thing was the major algorithm updates with social media. And before that, you were talking about search trends and things like that with SEO. But at the end of the day, these are getting into the weeds of something that really hasn't fundamentally shifted in over 150 years. And that is ultimately the marketing sales funnel, right? It's at its most basic core level, get attention, nurture that attention, show the customer your value, close the sale, and then retarget that customer. That really is all it comes down to. Now, how you get attention is going to shift somewhat, but even that really hasn't fundamentally changed, right? These days, you talk about things like influencer campaigns on social media, but it was, I believe, Rolex back in like the 1920s. So we're talking 100 years ago. Rolex was coming out with their first wristwatch, and the big major campaign that they had that they really wanted to really strike hot and get everyone's attention was putting their wristwatch on athletes. And so they had people who were crossing like the English Channel, swimming across the English Channel, wearing their wristwatch to show the durability of the wristwatch, right? And Rolex, a very enduring brand, a very enduring name. But at the end of the day, what did they do? They gave their wristwatch to an athlete. The athlete showed off the fundamental uses of and durability of said wristwatch. And now everyone wants the wristwatch, right? How's that any different from an influencer campaign today? And I'm not saying everyone's going to get LeBron James, but there are plenty of people out there on social media who have a following, who are willing to be able to work with local brands and work with solopreneurs and things like that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it gets eyeballs on your product. And more importantly, making sure you have alignment. And it's not just about they giving their wristwatch to like anybody, but they wanted to show off the durability of their wristwatch. So they gave it to someone who's going to put it through the test, right? Crossing the English Channel. Same thing here. Whatever it is that your product may be, if you want to go the influencer route to be able to get eyeballs on your product, make sure that you're picking an influencer that fits that model of what it is that your product is, where your advantage is, what separates you from the rest of the market. What is it that really makes you special? And that's the thing that you want to make sure that you have alignment on. And that's why I say like things like that, like marketing, the tools of marketing have changed dramatically, but marketing as a concept really hasn't changed in over 150 years.
Actually, that's an interesting way of thinking about it because, of course, Rolex has been around ever since I can remember. And I was born in 1920. Thank you very much. My grandparents weren't even born in 1920. It's interesting that you say that because I do want to come back to the concept of AI and just dig a little bit deeper into the role that AI could or should play in combination with somebody who's a marketing or branding expert like yourself, in helping out maybe the solopreneur or the very small business who maybe they can't afford a chief marketing officer or something like that, how would you recommend that somebody start to think about integrating AI into their marketing efforts in a way that's going to still work and not just go blah, blase, boring, bland AI?
I would say your expertise and your knowledge is the most important thing that you possess as the business owner. And your passion for your business is the thing that you're truly selling. People buy passion and people buy stories far more than people buy a product, right? A product very much is, if you're trying to sell the idea of a product, especially if the thing that you're selling is a commodity that any countless number of other people could potentially be selling, the thing that's going to set you apart is your passion for your business and your product and the story that you have behind it. Now, how that is utilized when you're talking about utilizing AI in marketing, using AI to generate content, using tools like ChatGPT, for example, to generate content is going to get you a very bland article. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be using those tools. You absolutely should, because they are amazing tools that really help speed up your overall process of creating content and generating the appropriate information. But you can't just write a prompt, have it spit out 300 words, copy, paste, and call it a day. You need to go back through. You need to make sure that you're adding your own expertise, your own knowledge to it. And beyond that, what I typically do, I've got an entire system that I work out when I'm writing an article, for example. If I'm writing a blog post or something like that, first thing I do is the keyword research. Try and figure out what it is that people are searching for. This is where we're talking about search engine optimization again, right? And whether it's Google or Etsy or Amazon or whatever the search functionality that you are trying to optimize for, you want to figure out how people are searching for the product that you are selling, right? And this goes for services as well, right? So if you're like a local business, I'd mentioned mechanics earlier. Mechanics, for example, will do really well on services like Google, right? You want to make sure you're optimized for local businesses and things along those lines. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you want to figure out, like, where are people going to be going to try to find you? And what are they going to be typing into that search field to try and find you? That's your keyword research. Once you understand your keywords and what it is that you're trying to optimize for, now you can start doing some competitive research. What are the current people who are ranking under those keywords writing? What did they put together? What are the questions they're answering? What are the headlines they're using? What are the major points about, or selling points that they're using for their information? You want to take that and interpret that into your own outline. So before you've ever touched any kind of AI service, you should have already done keyword research. You should have already done competitor research. You should already have a fully fledged outline of exactly what the content you want to write is, including what the major headlines are and what the questions that are going to be most common and what the questions that you're trying to answer are, what your differentiating sales points are going to be. All of that should be in your own. And then you can give that outline to ChatGPT. And what I typically do is give it piece by piece, right? And then you take what it writes and you look at ChatGPT not as the final end all copy paste, but it is your first draft. And now you have to edit, right? You have to add your expertise. You have to add your voice, your flair, and your passion to that content. I know a lot of people out there, and there are a lot of, they call them charlatans out there, that are saying there is this perfect flow where you can use one AI service to do the research for you and automatically pump it into ChatGPT, which will automatically generate an article that then posts to your website, which then can automatically and you never have to turn on a computer and set it and forget it. Those never work. And the reason why those never work is because you're generating a bunch of random gobbledygook, right? You're generating a bunch of bland, baseless content that's largely based on a large language model, reading other people's articles and rewriting them for you. And there's no passion, there's no expertise, there's no individualized voice, and there's nothing that sets you apart from literally everyone else out there.
I think that is a really good response, because I've played with ChatGPT a lot, and I use ChatGPT a lot in my own business. It's so easy just to get back bland, boring stuff if you just take what it gives you. And even when you learn how to do the prompts, it can still be really off mark. So okay, that's interesting to me. And so now I'm curious, because I want to dig just a little bit more. If somebody's a small business and they've done that work so that they can use ChatGPT to help them create something, where does somebody like you come in terms of being able to help them out as a marketing expert?
So at the point that you're looking to hire an agency, you want to keep in mind one big thing. When do you delegate, right? As a business owner myself, the first and major thing that I had to struggle with was learning when to delegate something. Because as we discussed, I've done a background that covered web development, design, email marketing, pay-per-click, SEO, and any number of other things, right? I've done it all. If it exists in marketing, I've done it. I always had the struggle of just telling clients, yeah, you need X, Y, and Z. You want a radio ad? Sure. I'll write something up. I'll get it reported. I'll have something sent over, right? I'll cut it together myself because I've got an audio and video editing background as well. At what point in time do you delegate, right? If I'm doing all of the work for a client, I'm not getting new clients. If I'm spending all of my time chasing client to get the payments that are owed and doing my accounting, I'm not getting new client. And that's where you really have to understand your place as a business owner. When I was working at one company, which I started an agency within an overall training organization, and it focused very heavily on the automotive aftermarket. So that's why I was mentioning mechanics earlier. For example, I worked with a lot of mechanics, body shops, truck shops, and can't tell you the number of times I've heard the same story. Well, any mechanic I've ever met has always been the same way, right? They were a mechanic working at someone's shop, decided one day that they're fed up working on said person's shop, and they're watching all the money walk out the door for their hard work. And they say, that's it. I can do this myself. And they go down the road and they open up their own shop. Now they're the ones fixing the cars. They're the ones getting paid. Fail almost immediately, because the thing they didn't realize is that the moment they opened their own shop, they stopped being a mechanic and started being a business owner.
Yeah.
When you were working at someone else's shop, it was great because you didn't have to get in the cars. The cars came to you. Well, you didn't have to chase them down for money. Someone else did that, right? You didn't have to run the billing. Someone else did that. And now you do, because it's just you. And so delegation is crucial. And so when you're talking about at what point in time do you look to hire an agency, it's at the point in time that you realize that you have a lot of room to grow. You can't focus on doing it yourself anymore because it's keeping you from actually operating the business, whatever that business may be, right? You can't keep being the mechanic and also own the shop.
I think that's a really good response. And my mind immediately goes to the old catchphrase for my next question. And that is that the shoemaker's children have no shoes. How do you handle the marketing for your own marketing agency?
Not very well. Spend time on other people's marketing. Oh, honestly, the marketing that I've done for my own company has largely been word of mouth. And that's largely because I've been thankfully blessed and well fed with clients. And I've got a really good relationship and networking with clients. And this is more of a B2B marketing strategy. My website is very bare bones, covers the basics, and I don't do a ton of effort in actually building that out. Now, I'm getting to a point where I'm looking at it and saying, I want to start expanding. I want to start growing. I want to start really broadening the horizon of what this can be. and taking on a lot more clients, bringing on more people that I can train. And in doing so, what I'm most likely going to do in the near future is hire on people who I exclusively have trained by doing the marketing for our business. And then as clients come in, I can start feeding those clients to those people and then hire on the next group and say, all right, this is the marketing strategy that we're running for this business. Do it for me. And once that humming along and going well and you got a good rhythm, now I can push you and trust that you can do it for the clients as well. So I look at my marketing strategy as a twofold thing. One, it's very largely a networking strategy. I go to a lot of different events. I'm part of several different chambers of commerce. I'm in multiple different networking groups, and I really try to focus in on that local level. Because again, the thing that I'm most interested in right now is helping out small businesses, especially local small businesses, because I want to be able to support the community. And so that's where I've really put my effort in. But as I look to expand and grow and build more of a foothold moving to the next level, I'm going to look at my marketing strategy as a training strategy, just as much as it is my own personal marketing.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when you're starting out when you're first getting started as an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, whatever, your marketing strategy by definition has to change as you grow and scale, because you start with doing all the hats and then you've got to let some things go. You got to delegate and you got to bring other people in. And as you said, train them so that they can do it the way that you want them to do, because they're responsible for your brand, your culture, your vibe, and making sure you're serving customers well. I think it's a really important point. So that's a good point to raise. You've got to adjust your strategy as you grow. It's interesting to me just to hear the journey that people go on as they obviously get experience, start a business, and then go from, as I said, wearing all the hats to becoming a business owner. What would you say is the biggest challenge that a small but growing agency of any ilk might face based on your experience as they go through that break point where you break through the plateau of it's just you and your hats and you move into that whole team side of things so that you can grow beyond your current boundaries? So what's the most important thing for people to think about?
It's no longer your baby. That's probably one of the hardest things that I had to learn, because again, I wanted to be able to do everything, and having enough experience with everything, I could provide a very high level of service. And I wasn't necessarily happy with the quality of the work that was done when I did hire people. But at the same time, I have to keep in mind, one, it's on me to train them. And two, they are not me. They may do a significantly better job than I will, but I'm too locked in my own system that I not even realize it. Not up front, not until I start seeing numbers and results. And so that's the thing that I would say is really important to remember, is the moment you start hiring people on, this is no longer just your baby. They aren't you. They're not going to do things exactly the same way that you do. And if there's something that's really important for you, get done a certain way, it's on you to teach them. They're not just going to magically know. But what I will say is something that I learned from a lot of the bigger companies that I was at is when you're talking about training a team and future planning, a lot of times, especially these days, companies don't like to hire from within as much as they like to hire from outside, specifically because they want fresh ideas, especially when you're talking about work. Now, if you're talking about engineering or something like that, it may not necessarily be the case. I don't claim to understand exactly how every industry runs their specific business. But when you're talking about marketing, 9 times out of 10, companies are more likely to hire from outside source than they are to promote from within. And the reason why is because they want fresh perspectives and fresh ideas. Everyone there already knows how to do the things the way that this company has done them, but they are trying to solve a problem. And so the problem that they're trying to solve needs a new perspective.
Yeah. And as a digital agency, have you found that bigger organizations are happy to bring in digital agencies to help with developing strategy, developing fresh perspectives, whatever? Or do they tend to just, as you say, bring in people that are employees as opposed to agencies?
They will do both. So it really depends on, again, like when you're talking about bigger organizations, you have set fiscal budgets, usually set annually. So how do you best make use of your resources is really what it comes down to. And sometimes the best use of your resources is in a salaried employee doing a specific job. Sometimes the best use of your resources is hiring on an agency to build out a game plan that your team can then execute on. Sometimes the best use of your resources is to just hire on an agency that handles this thing that you no longer have to worry about. You don't got to think about it, and your team can coordinate with them and manage them to some degree. But for the most part, just let them deal with it. And we got to focus on all these other things that we got to tackle. And so even major blue chip companies operate with the same philosophy. It's you've got your set resources. How do you best optimize those resources? And the optimization of those resources very often means that they're hiring on an agency to handle something, whether it's a short-term project or a long-term contract, or they're handling all of a marketing campaign or just the SEO portion of this campaign, or they're the ones updating the website, so we don't have to worry about that. It changes depending on each company's very specific needs and resources. But yeah, agencies are very regularly hired by large companies that have an army of marketing people in their employment. They've got many departments of marketing teams, but they'll still hire on agencies because they're like, you know what? Your time is best served doing X, Y, and Z. I don't want you wasting it on this random campaign over here. I need you to focus on that.
And I think that's a hopeful thought for people who are running small agencies to know that it is possible to go after contracts with bigger organizations as well as work with smaller businesses and solopreneurs and stuff. Look, it's been really great talking with you, Phillip. If people were interested in either finding out more about what you do or in getting in touch with you, where's the best place for them to go?
So they can get in touch with me or learn more about the business from my website. It's digitalonbrand.com. I try to keep it as simple as possible. I keep you on brand, and it's a digital agency. Digitalonbrand.com. There's a place there for you to be able to contact me if you're interested at all. I also have a lead magnet on the website, again, digitalonbrand.com. And if anyone wants to go there and sign up, they can get my newsletter. And I have regular marketing notes and tips and different updates on strategies and things like that are going on.
Sounds good. So what's your lead magnet do? What is it?
It's a sign up for my newsletter. The newsletter, again, is a good way to keep up to date as to what's going on in marketing. What are things that you can do on a small business or local business level?
Fantastic. Thanks. We'll put that in the show notes as a reminder.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this conversation with Phillip Marzouk. Phillip really has a knack for making the world of marketing and branding accessible, especially if you're working on a smaller budget. So if you're interested in learning more about Phillip's work, check out his website, digitalonbrand.com, where you can sign up for his newsletter and get regular marketing tips for small business owners. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review, because your feedback helps others discover the show, and it makes it possible for me to keep delivering content that helps you build your business. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.